guys, Justin here. So we were originally going to include this interview in our upcoming third episode of Baseball and Whatever, but it was just such a great discussion, filled with lots of great information from our guest, that we wanted to break it out and make it its own thing. So we'll still have episode 3 of Baseball and Whatever. We'll be recording that probably Wednesday or Thursday, and we'll get that up in time for the weekend. But this special episode is a special interview that we did with Joe Darlington. If you like James Bond, if you like any of the James Bond movies, we'll be discussing them all. If you played any of the James Bond games growing up, including Goldeneye, you're going to fit in perfectly with this discussion. So we hope you enjoy it. Hope you check it out. Remember, you can reach us on YouTube if you search Baseball and Whatever. We are now available on every single podcast network that I can think of, including the two main ones, Google Podcasts and Apple Podcasts. Just search Baseball and Whatever, and we should come up, and then you can subscribe to us and add us in your feed. And we're also on Twitter, so feel free to reach out to us on Twitter at Baseball and What. And if you have any questions for the show, we'll be happy to read them on the next recording. You can email us at baseball@andwhatever@gmail.com. So without further ado, here's our interview with Joe Darlington, author of Being James Bond. He's also the creator of the YouTube channel, Being James Bond. You can find a lot of his great interviews, discussions, and videos about everything Bond on there. It's awesome. I highly recommend it. And then you can also reach out to him on Twitter at Head of Section. So hope you guys enjoy it. Give it a listen. Tell us what you think. And if there's anybody else you'd like us to try and interview, we'll do our best to try and get someone. And again, thank you to Joe. That was awesome to hang out with us for an hour and a half last night and discuss Bond with us with two relatively new podcast people. We definitely appreciate it.
We're going to be talking some Goldeneye. We'll get into the video game. Well, the video games, really. We'll get into a little bit of the movie. Justin, you've seen Goldeneye, right?
Yes, that is the one I've seen all the way through. I know I've seen Quantum of Solace. I want to say I saw Spectre at your house once at some point.
Spectre doesn't my house.
Okay,
Justin.
All right. Then maybe it wasn't at your house.
No, that one's a no-no. So
okay.
No, I think it was.
All right.
And we'll also kind of get into Project 007 by IO Studios. But Justin, I know you and I are saying we have to get today's youth back into baseball. But do we have to get today's youth back into Bond and our video games, the outlet? So we brought an expert to discuss this with. Joe Darlington joins us, head of section himself, author of Being James Bond Volume 1, the Being James Bond YouTube channel, podcast, interviews, movie reviews, all sorts of James Bond content from Joe. Joe, welcome to Baseball and Whatever. How are you, bud?
What's going on, gentlemen? I got to tell you, I kind of feel like I missed out that I missed the conversation about the Snyder Cut. I could have talked about that one for a while, too.
Oh, we should have brought that. We should have brought that up.
We're at the point now where we're so new at this. We're afraid to ask people because it's like as you can tell, this is being held together by like Band-Aids and duct tape. So yeah, we've talked about in the past. I am a self-abashed DC fanboy. So yeah, I enjoyed it because I thought it was better than the original theatrical cut. But 4 hours is a long time to sit and watch it too. So.
I'm with you there. 4 hours is a long time, but I got to tell you, I didn't flinch. I literally, I kind of set myself up. I was like, I know this is going to be 4 hours. So I had some things to sort of keep me busy as I was watching. But then all of a sudden, I kind of found myself just watching it. And at one point, I guess like about 3 hours in, I kind of sort of realized like, wow, I feel like I've been sitting here for a long time. But honestly, I was never bored. And you're absolutely right. I thought this was far superior. To the point where I thought this is not only is this better, but this is a pretty damn good movie. I kind of felt like he really did redeem himself. Yeah. And I was not at all a Batman v Superman fan. So I was not expecting a lot. So when I saw the theatrical version, obviously, like everybody else, I was like, good Lord, that was terrible. So, I kind of had no interest, but when I heard about the Snyder Cut, I kind of perked up and I'm like, I am kind of curious to see what happens. And yeah, not only did he redeem himself and put out a superior product than what they put out, but I thought this was legitimately a good movie.
Yes. See, Greg, now you have, if that's not more of a selling point for why you need to finish it, I got nothing else.
I trust Joe very much. So that was that was good to hear. And I'm like I said, I'm only in part 3, And I was ragging on the whole musical slow motion scenes. I'm like, Justin, I
Mm.
can't take it anymore. But,
It's still very
you
much
know,
a Zack Snyder.
Yes.
So I mean,
Yeah.
there's going to be a lot of slow mo, and there's going to be a lot of stuff. I mean, it takes itself very seriously. But
Yeah.
but again, honestly, I really did feel like this was, and I actually do like Snyder. I like 300. I thought
Mhm.
Watchmen was a great movie. So I mean, I think he is a very capable guy.
Yeah.
So I feel like he kind of got the raw end of the deal. Like, I mean, he does, again, he takes his own work a little maybe too seriously sometimes, where he doesn't really understand like he never winks at the audience.
No.
There's never a sense of I would almost say that he's not very self-aware. It's like he it's kind of like he's a nerd and nobody knows he's a nerd, but he's kind of
Right.
a cool nerd,
Yeah.
so he just runs with his thing and does it. And honestly, I think he really did put out a good product. Sorry if I kind of already took us
No.
off the rails.
No. Hey,
This is
anytime we can talk
this
about
is what we
Batman
need.
is good with me. It's funny you bring up Snyder and 300. So I'm a social studies teacher for middle school, and we just got done with
Nice.
our ancient Greece and Trojan War section. The amount of times I had the kids ask me if we could watch 300 in class. I said, no, I enjoy having a job. We are not watching 300 in class. But
Right.
on that note, Greg, I'll let you take it from here, because you guys are the Bond aficionados. I am more
Should we just say the hell with the Bond stuff? Let's just talk Snyder.
I am the Bond poser. I only know
Right.
through
There you go.
the zeitgeist. When something really big comes on, I can absorb it through that. So
Well, Joe, I know it doesn't seem like it right now, but is this your first baseball podcast? Because I guess that's what we are first and foremost. So.
It is. It is. Not only is it my first baseball podcast, but I will confess, honestly, like Justin is as kind of as much of a newbie to Bond as you are. That's probably as bad as I am when it comes to baseball.
you fit right in then.
I love going to I mean, I played baseball when I was a kid, as an adult. I love going to games. But honestly, like my brothers would, like, they'll tell you who's playing where and how they're doing and what their average is, et cetera, et cetera. Once I'm not watching it, it just kind of goes out of my brain.
Yeah.
So it's just I kind of fake it during these baseball conversations the best I can, like everybody else. But
well, sometimes we wish it was out of our brains.
Yes.
Quite frankly.
Yeah. Growing up in Chicago, as a Cubs fan, it's just it's heartbreak after heartbreak, and then there's a high point, and then it's back to heartbreak, and
yeah.
No, well, it's a good analogy for life.
I'll tell you this, it's funny because when you I'm in northern New Jersey, right? And I actually was born in Brooklyn, New York. So my parents, aunts, and uncles, when they were young, they were Brooklyn Dodgers fans.
Okay.
So once the Dodgers left Brooklyn, they were like, well, I guess we got to find a new team, and it almost felt like my family sort of split, where half became Yankees fans and half became Mets fans. So you had, the Yankees fans are just always tickled pink because the Yankees are always winning the World Series. And then, of course, you got the Mets fans are just constantly frustrated. And next year, although over the decades, it's funny how the Mets have sort of had their kind of moments in the sun. But for the most part, I think any Mets fan kind of knows that frustration.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of similarities there between the Chicago teams and the Mets.
Yep.
For sure.
Yep.
So,
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for tagging along. And
really quick, 15 years of podcasting, right, Joe?
Yeah.
That's truly impressive.
Incredible.
Justin and I haven't been podcasting for 15 days. So
yeah, this is relatively new.
Well, welcome to the fray. It's I tell all the newbies all the time. I say, guys, the water's fine. Jump on in, and we always need young, fresh blood. Believe me. Honestly, it was pretty. It's a nice thing today to be able to say that I've been doing it for as long as I've been doing it. And honestly, I kind of got just sort of lucky. Years ago, I can remember a buddy of mine, like very early on, like I barely knew what a podcast was. It was so new. It was such a new thing. And I had a friend who was a little more tech savvy than I was, and he was doing a video game podcast. And it's actually pretty legit. Like he was with a couple other people who, obviously they put a little production value into their podcast. And at one point, he just sort of said to me, he goes, "Hey, you're my resident Bond buddy. They just came out with a new video game, From Russia with Love. Do you want to do a little review on it?" And I was like, "Sure." So I, kind of scripted it out,
Mhm.
recorded it, threw in a little music and some sound effects, and boom, all of a sudden I was like, this is fun. I'm
Yeah.
hooked. So,
Yeah.
and there wasn't a lot of Bond podcasts out back then.
Mhm.
So it kind of,
I
but it was
think you were the
weird.
first, weren't you, Joe? You were
I
the
wasn't the first.
Okay.
There were at least one or two other guys. There was one Bond outlet, like a pretty recognizable news outlet, and they were sort of doing the podcast thing for a while.
Okay.
Their talent, the guy who was doing it, eventually just sort of stopped. So I think for a while I was probably the only guy doing it, and and again, it's a lot of fun. So I mean, I can honestly say, like, I don't know if I'll ever be the best, but I just because I'm too dumb to quit, I've kind of been the guy who's doing it the longest. So
Right.
I'll take it. And it was weird in the early days too, because back then there was, I mean, it was funny how podcasting came out before social media.
Mhm.
Like there was literally no Facebook, no nothing. I don't even think MySpace was a thing at that point.
Right.
So when you did a podcast, it was just like, it was like you might as well just be writing a note, putting it in a bottle, and throwing it out into the ocean, and just kind of hoping like, hey, maybe somebody will hear this. Little by little, I got some feedback, which was I'm like, oh, all right, finally some people are actually listening to it. But it really wasn't until much later that you started to get a sense of like, all right, I have a little bit of an audience now, you know.
Mhm.
That's so it's not for nothing. Somebody's actually
Yeah.
listening to on the other end.
Yeah, it's exciting. Like I know for us, you know, Greg and I, like we're checking like our anchor listings. Like, oh, we had somebody from Virginia listen today, and who knows, they might have listened to
Yeah.
2 minutes. But it's like at least we can say they listened. So it's been a lot of fun trying to dabble with like you know, OBS and clean feed and trying to get Zoom calls into you know, stuff like that. So I still have a
Yeah.
lot of way to go, a lot of work to do. But Greg's thankfully pushing me forward. So it's been a lot of fun so far for the 2-3 weeks we've been doing this
For
so far.
the no, it absolutely has. So you know, we're just gonna try and keep it going best we can here.
Yeah,
Nice.
So
yeah.
And I think the format is pretty interesting. I like it. I like it's baseball plus. It's kind of you have the baseball and you sort of throw in these little side things.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
kind of it gives you guys a little flexibility and
It's-
it should be fun.
It's literally been I feel like, you know, about a month or two ago with the pandemic and everything, it was, you know, obviously Greg and I are brother-in-laws, and our other brother-in-law tags on every once in a while, and you know, we haven't been able to see each other as much, so it's like, well, let's just record ourselves talking, and you know, because we talk about baseball all the time because we commiserate on how you know, cruddy our teams are, and it's like, and then we talk about movies and video games, and it's really just a conversation we would have if we were in person. So it's been a lot of
yeah,
fun.
we really want to open up because, like you said, Justin, if we just talked about baseball, you know, we just go insane,
We'd
you
be
know, with
two
misery and stuff.
very,
So
two, you know, curmudgeons just complaining all the time. So
There you go.
exactly,
Right.
exactly. All right, man. Do you want to get into some Goldeneye here, Nintendo
Yeah,
64?
yeah.
Really quick, starting with you, Justin. I know for me, this was kind of like my first, you know, first-person shooter on a console.
Sure.
You know, the Nintendo 64, playing with my buddies. Was that kind of your introduction to console gaming at all?
No, actually. So I grew up, I was the PlayStation kid on the block. I did not have a
That's
Nintendo
right.
64, but my neighbors did. So we would kind of use each other when they wanted to come over and play your variety of PlayStation games, you know, whether it's Crash Bandicoot or Metal Gear Solid or, you know, Resident Evil, they'd come over. And then when I wanted to use them for, you know, Goldeneye or was it WWF No Mercy, back when we were big wrestling fans back in the day.
Oh, those games were great.
Yeah. Like I grew up playing, we had a PC that actually ran games when I was a kid, and I grew up playing Doom and Doom 2 at the age of like, oh gosh, 7, 8 years old. And I mean, thankfully I turned out somewhat adjusted, but yeah, so that was my intro. But in terms of first person, I'd say it was probably my first person console game. But you know, I had to get it from playing with my neighbors. So, but I loved it. We spent so much time playing that game as kids.
Well, it was also my first person, you know, shooting game, and I was just completely blown away by it. Playing with my buddies and everything. I think it was I can't remember how old I was, but not only did it, you know, get me into video gaming, but it was like my gateway into the James Bond universe. And it all started because I don't know if you remember this, but in the single player, there were the last 2 bonus missions.
It was like
you know,
Aztec
and Egyptian.
There you go.
And I saw the movie. So first, just I'm trying not to get like Karen Bay here and tell you my life story. But I saw Tomorrow Never Dies first. That was my first Bond movie ever. It was still one of my favorites because it was my first. That was after I played Goldeneye. So Goldeneye was, the first Bond thing. Tomorrow Never Dies, the first movie, and then we rented Goldeneye from Blockbuster. I remember, and I watched the movie, thought it was great. I'm like, yeah, it's just like the game. That's awesome. Then it ended, and I was like, hey, wait a minute. There were 2 more missions at the end of in the single player. There's the Aztec, and then there was the Egypt. Like, what's going on with that? And then there were the multiplayer characters. I call them the Mount Rushmore of Bond henchmen. They were Jaws, Oddjob, Mayday, and Baron Samedi. I'm just like, wait, these characters weren't in the movie. Like, where are they from?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what kind of, got me started on that, I would say, because I'm like, oh, there are other movies, with other actors. And then I remember my grandmother showed me Goldfinger. I was like, okay.
You had a cool grandma then.
Yeah, there's Oddjob right there. But who's this guy playing Bond? And she goes, that's Sean Connery, and he's the only James Bond that matters. And I'm just like, oh, okay. As I discovered there are other actors, like she didn't know who George Lazenby was, didn't care about him at all. Roger Moore, not a fan. Timothy Dalton, didn't care. And it wasn't until Pierce Brosnan came along that she was like, okay, someone else can live up to Sean Connery, and that's that man right there. Wow. Even though his movies might not be the best, like he's the only one. And then getting about Daniel Craig came along, and she passed in 2010 still hating Daniel Craig as Bond. So
she knew what she liked, and she was staying.
She knew what she liked. Like, that guy is not Bond, and he doesn't belong here. So, but that was kind of my story right there. But yeah, so it was Goldeneye that got me into the Bond universe. Those last 2 missions, all these multiplayer characters. I'm like, where did they come from? And then I discovered the movies. So that was my story like that. So Joe, you played Goldeneye, obviously. Do you have any fun memories, obviously, playing with your friends and everything? The multiplayer obviously was the big one.
Yeah.
What did you tell us some good times about that?
Well, that was, it's funny because as sort of a Bond nerd, you tend to, especially like for birthday presents, Christmas presents, like your friends, your family, they know you're a Bond guy. So when they're trying to find like a gift, there's always like a Bond game. There was like a Bond Trivial Pursuit, or there was like a DVD version of it where it was like a Bond trivia game. And you'd always have these things, and like no one would ever play with you. It's like, hey, anybody want to play? They're like, no. Why would we play that? Like,
exactly. It's like my childhood.
Right. It's like it could be you against the whole family. It doesn't matter. You're still gonna destroy everybody.
Right.
Goldeneye, on the other hand, was a totally different animal, and everyone wanted to play this. And I remember I had it and played it and just absolutely loved it. I mean, it was probably to this day. I think if I look back, even from like childhood till today, and I think what is the best video game I ever played, ever owned, it's got to be Goldeneye. I mean, that sucker was just spectacular. I remember, like, I can remember like one specific New Year's Eve, and I'm going to show my age, but I guess I was Goldeneye came out in 95, and I was 25 years old when it came out. So and my brothers, my cousins, we were all kind of like early mid 20s. So I remember one New Year's Eve in particular. My cousin was in town, so we were all just sort of hanging around at my parents' house, drinking beers and staying up late or whatever. Really, we weren't going out, we weren't doing anything. But my cousin's like, so when are we playing Goldeneye? And we just ended up playing Goldeneye till all hours of the night, just having a ball. It was just so much fun. I remember burning through it, by myself, and then anytime somebody was around doing multiplayer, hours and hours.
Yeah. It just never ended. I know for my group of friends, if you picked, and I'm sure Greg, you're going to probably bring this up, but if you picked Oddjob, you were getting punched. Like, there was no the smaller hitbox or scan box, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
That was a big deal for us, and thankfully, and I think one of my friends had like the I don't know what you had to do because I never took the time or I didn't have the patience, but where you could unlock all the characters in multiplayer and play as like
Hmm.
the different, like the St. Petersburg Guard and all this kind of
Yep.
stuff. And like we
Yep.
thought that was so cool, but yeah, it was a lot of fun. And I think it shows how much it stands the test of time. The fact that, I mean, we're sitting here 25 years later talking about it.
Yeah.
And as somebody who obviously I seeked out the Goldeneye movie afterwards because I wanted to know more about these characters. And I was very curious about Boris because I'm like, why is there a guy in a game with guns that's wearing like a Hawaiian shirt and khaki shorts? I was so so that drew me in. So I definitely, even though I wouldn't say I know much about Bond, that movie, or that game, I should say, really got me into the movie itself. So
yeah.
Yeah,
And it really
100%.
did, honestly. That really did bring in probably a whole generation of fans.
Yeah.
And it was I think it was probably I would venture to guess that even the filmmakers never even really thought about it in that respect, like about how to bring in the younger crowd. Oh, Jesus, video games, sure.
Yeah, make a game, right? Yeah, and
and
I think too. I mean, growing up, I played a ton of games, and I feel like anytime there was a game based on a licensed property, it was usually garbage. It wasn't good. It was usually a rush job just to cash in on the movie, kind of like when they would make new action figures for something that was related to the movie. And it was like, wow, this is actually really good, So and it had the multiplayer, it had the single player, it had everything. So
yeah,
for more.
And it felt like it did the franchise justice too, because going back to what I said earlier about kind of discovering the universe, even the game modes you could play within multiplayer, because there was a game mode. There was just the normal traditional, what they call deathmatch nowadays. It's just racking up, points, kills against your buddies. But then they have, a you only live twice mode, the living daylights, which was like kind of like a flag tag mode. Hold on to the flag as long as you can. They had Man with a Golden Gun, which was my personal favorite, where y'all rush to the middle of the map and, you try to get the golden gun. And then they had the License to Kill game mode, which was just kind of like a one shot, and you're gone mode. And that was part of the thing too. Like when I went back, I'm like, oh wait, the game modes are also the names of movies. It's like I see what's going on here.
Yeah.
So I mean, that was a huge part of it too. I mean, just going through all those maps, all like the classes you could do for weapons, like you said, Justin, the character selection. It was I feel like it was a really, immersive and complex multiplayer game
For sure.
For its time, that was working on a video game console that, not just a PC, but, a console. So,
right.
Did you guys have any favorite maps? Like, did you have one favorite? Do you remember any of them? Me personally, I remember the Archives map, and that's in the movie when Bond has to escape the Russian base after he kills Ormov, and then it's like the white and green walls, and then there's a library in there. I remember I used to play with my buddies. I think we were in fourth grade or whatever. But if you got the RCP-90, like one of my I think it was Aaron. He would hold you hostage in one of the little cubicles, and we would try and go rescue him. But you knew if you had that, you weren't going anywhere. If you tried to move, you were dead. So I remember playing on the Archives map. I think that was my favorite map of the of multiplayer. So
yeah,
I
remember being really partial. The one that's the very first one. I forget what it's called. Like
that's Temple, wasn't it? Was it Temple?
No, it was. No. I guess it was just called Archangel or something. It was the like literally like in the movie. It's like when he kind of comes down. It starts in the bathroom.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
that was my favorite too. Because
facility.
Okay.
I think that sounds about
facility,
right.
Yeah.
I don't know if I remember what I loved about it was that once you sort of had the layout memorized, you really knew it well. And it was honestly, it was like that was the one. Like if somehow I wrangled my sister to play, I'm like, hey, I'm really bored. Come play with this for a little while. I'd make her play that one. And of course, like she has no idea where she is. I could just look over at her screen. I know exactly where she is. So I can just get behind her. And she's like, I'm sick of this stupid game. That's it.
Yeah.
But it was such a good, like, cause honestly, it was fairly detailed. So like, so to really kind of memorize the layout of that was pretty good. Like, so yeah, that one was a lot of fun.
That was definitely my favorite too. There's something about hiding in the stalls and then waiting for one of your friends to open up the wrong
Right.
stall and just blast them. And
Yep.
and I think, Joe, to your point, I agree. Like when you couldn't play with your buddies or your friends, you had like my younger sister would sometimes play with us too. And it was like you had to find that fine line of, okay, well, I want to win because I don't want to let my sister win. But if I play too well, she's not going to play with me anymore. And
Right.
it's like that little bit of psychology that's stringing people
Right.
along, so to speak. So
you'd have to just sort of sacrifice once or twice. Yeah.
Oh man, you got me. You're getting so good at this. You might win. No, not going to happen. So
Yep.
Did you guys play the single player version of the game? That was also, I mean, if I did not love it, maybe I did love multiplayer a little more, but I love the single player, just as much, I guess, if anything. One thing I loved about it too, especially playing the game first and then seeing the movie, I was like, you know what? I think the game really does it justice. I think the locations and, just kind of like the mission objectives, they were, I guess for its time now, looking back, I mean, you had pretty open levels and, everything wasn't so linear like it is kind of nowadays, where it's just kind of like a tunnel. You're going, objective A, B, C, and that's how you're going to go. That's how it's mapped out for you. Goldeneye I felt was a little more open in that way. And I think it really did the movie justice with how well it kind of, adapted that story and brought into the video game. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, it's somebody who saw the movie after and like I said, seeked it out because of the game. It was kind of cool to see the different, my favorite. Oh gosh, and Greg, you're gonna have to remind me. I don't remember what the name of the level was, but whatever level it is where you're on the boat and you're trying to rescue the hostages. Is that
Frigate?
Familiar? Okay, that was my favorite for some reason. Just running around saving the hostages, and I think you have to bug a helicopter. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Okay.
You have to bug the Tiger helicopter.
It's been a long time, so that was one of my favorites. But it was
which he didn't actually do in the movie.
Oh, really?
Right,
that's right.
They stopped him, but they stopped him beforehand.
That's right. So it was for me. It was so cool to see. It was like, oh, I know what's coming up. Oh, I've played that. Okay, I did that. And in my head, what I was doing on the Nintendo 64 was exactly what was happening in the movie. Because in my that's of course I was just as cool as Bond in that movie. So, but that's the one that stands out for me.
What's funny? I think it's so interesting because I've never really thought about it before. I mean, I had already seen the movie obviously before I played the game, but for you guys, it was the other way around. I'm kind of curious if the movie was a little bit of a letdown because, like, as I'm sort of thinking about it, a video game by its nature will take the movie, like kind of any sort of movie that becomes a video game. You'll find them kind of like trying to figure out, well, how can we fluff up certain scenes to turn them into action scenes, right? And the frigate, like you mentioned, is sort of a perfect example where he bugs the helicopter, whatever. But like you said, in the game, they're trying to sort of like, well, how do we turn this into a level, right? I would think maybe going backwards, seeing the movie afterwards, is there a little sense of disappointment, kind of going like, oh, he didn't do any of that stuff here, or
that's a good point.
Me personally, I never felt that disappointed. But I know what you're talking about though, Joe, because there are maybe with video games or other movies, or even with books, sometimes you go back and like, yeah, they could have done so much more with this, but maybe it's just, the age I was, but like I said, playing the game first and then seeing the movie. Obviously it was different, but maybe I was just so drawn into the movie. And I remember the locations are what stood out to me. Like that was the big thing for me. It's like, okay, he's at the frigate, he's at the ship, he's not rescuing hostages, but he's there.
He's there.
He's there in Severnaya where there's snow and everything. Even though he never actually went there, the movie takes us there.
Right.
So that was kind of just understanding, just the flow of that and everything, and all the parallels and everything, even though it wasn't exactly in the game, obviously, but I felt it's probably one of the games that, really did the movie, justice and how they executed that.
You're kind of giving me a flashback, Greg, too, because I remember, like, I'm having a flash. Like, I see that you got all the games representing behind you, which is pretty sweet, by the way. And
yes, I
do.
do
Have The World Is Not Enough, and I remember playing The World Is Not Enough, and that was one of those games where it was similar, where they would again try to sort of fluff it up a little bit and add things.
Yes.
One of the things that they did in that game was they added an actual blackjack level like where you, because there's a scene that very quickly is in the casino. They do this whole thing where you have to beat the dealer at blackjack. And I remember playing it, and I guess it was probably this, like I probably went through the game once quickly just because I was anxious to play it, and I kind of wanted to beat it. And then I went through it again, played it again. I remember kind of doing the blackjack table, and I was sort of curious, like even you had to get to a certain. It was interesting. You had to get a certain score to move past it, but you didn't have to move past it either. Like it would let you just sort of keep on playing. So I decided, like, all right, now I'm just kind of curious to see how much I can win playing blackjack. And it was funny, once you got to a certain level, it almost, I guess what it does is that it didn't want you to struggle too long on this level, so it got progressively easier. So it was, after, if you played that long enough, you would just keep hitting blackjack. Like after like maybe a half an hour, you would just hit blackjack every single time. Well played, sir. Well played, sir. And you just like trying to get you through this thing. But I'm like, this is fun. I'll just keep on going.
That was one I remember playing that one. I had that for PS1, and I again never saw The World Is Not Enough. But I remember just being like, oh, this isn't like Goldeneye. This isn't, you know what I mean? That kind of threw me off a little bit as a kid. So
that was a tough thing for a while. The Bond video games. I remember there was a Tomorrow Never Dies game.
I played that.
World Is Not Enough game, and honestly, Goldeneye just spoiled everybody. It just ruined people. So every time they put out another game, they just could not match that Goldeneye again. So it was always like, it's not Goldeneye.
As I go back to like my, I have to hook up the N64 again to get my Goldeneye fix because the current games aren't, hitting it.
And it's so funny. I mean, I can honestly say to this day, I really don't think I like a lot of the games they came out with, like the Nightfire, Agent Under Fire. I mean, they were really good in their own right, and they were a lot of fun. But I think it was probably not until years later when the Quantum game came out that I genuinely found myself playing it pretty often. Like I was really kind of liking that one. I still wouldn't say it was better. Not by I definitely. GoldenEye is kind of unmatched. Like you can't recapture that magic. But I will say that when Quantum came out, and that was kind of fun because now you have online play. Right. So now you're sort of playing people online, which was this for me, this was totally new. I was like, oh, wow, this is a thing. And I remember there was the one level, which was, and that game was kind of cool because it was casino and Quantum together. So I remember doing the multiplayer, and the one I would gravitate towards a lot. I remember Embassy was a big one. And also the Venice was another big one. Okay. And I remember that was one, where you can kind of get a good layout of the land a little bit. And I kind of was thinking like that's when I started to have sort of at least kind of flashbacks. Like I was remembering, oh yeah, this is kind of like this is how it was playing Goldeneye, where I kind of got the hang of it and would play it a lot. So yeah, it's funny how for so long it was this struggle to really get anything that matched Goldeneye, and it was just industry standard going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Joe, I also played a ton of Quantum of Solace on the Xbox 360. I love the multiplayer on that. And it wasn't too like difficult either. It wasn't like Call of Duty where you have all these hardcore gamers out there that kill you in the blink of an eye. Like you was actually I think every kind of level of gamer could compete in that multiplayer in that game in general. So no, definitely one of my favorite Bond games there.
It was really kind of a diamond when I remember I played it a lot, and then obviously you sort of you got bored of it and you moved on. But then I remember like years later going like, man, I really want to play some Quantum, and I dug it out, went to play it again, and then it was like, oh right, but now no one else is playing it. So like it was like no one else. It's like I was like, oh, this sucks. I'm just I'm by myself. Like there's literally no one else playing.
Yep.
Right. Yep. Well, one game I wanted to bring up, guys, we were kind of talking about how nothing is kind of lived up to Goldeneye a little bit. I feel there's kind of like a little bit of an outlier. It's not a Bond game, but it's more of a spiritual successor, and that is Perfect Dark
Okay.
for the Nintendo 64. Did you guys? I feel like that was more like a kind of like the next step past Goldeneye. Did you guys play Perfect Dark for Nintendo
No.
64?
I just remember hearing it was like the what spiritual successor kind of to what
Yeah,
Goldeneye was doing.
yeah. I mean, I think that's what they kind of titled it. It was also developed by Rare, same
Mhm.
developers and everything. It was just kind of more of an advanced engine.
Okay.
But that was kind of like a another Nintendo 64 game that kind of almost played homage to GoldenEye.
Okay.
That they kind of, I think that was like I think GoldenEye was kind of the groundbreaker with that console first person shooter. You know, it was the one they finally got right. And I think it was GoldenEye, and then they developed Perfect Dark, and I think that kind of paved the way for what we play now, kind of like these Call of Duty, Halo
Sure.
games or whatever. They're not as good, but I think it all kind of stemmed from those two games. So Perfect Dark is another personal favorite of mine.
Mhm.
They actually have all the like the GoldenEye, excuse me, the GoldenEye guns in that game that you can use in multiplayer, and they had reload animations. It was like a game that also included blood. So, as a young kid playing that, getting it for Christmas, like, oh no, don't worry, Mom, it's a friendly game, and then just being addicted to that for hours, and there
Yeah.
was the homework on the side over there.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, been there. Definitely been there.
Yeah, I never actually played it, but I remember when you said it, I was like, oh, that sounds really familiar, because I feel like I've heard it in a lot of GoldenEye conversations, but I've
yeah.
never actually played it.
Really quick, some other Bond games that have come out. I know we talked about several of them. We mentioned Tomorrow Never Dies, The World Is Not Enough. Joe, you mentioned Agent Under Fire. Justin, me, we still love playing Nightfire when we get together
We have,
sometimes.
and
You know that.
I am like the little sister in the room, or the sibling. I cannot get my hands around those controls, and you and our other brother-in-law just consistently wipe the floor with me. But I'm a good sport about it. So
that one was also another fun multiplayer, even though it didn't ever, it always felt like something was missing, like it never was complete. And again, it could have just been because GoldenEye was just the big one. Nothing could ever match it. And then we had some third person games. We had Everything or Nothing, from Russia with Love, which I definitely played a lot of. And then there was a Bloodstone. Joe,
Yeah.
did you get into any of those along the way?
Yeah,
I know
I
you
did.
mentioned From Russia with Love.
Yeah, I mean, I can honestly say, like, I never really got into games. See, it's funny, as we're talking about GoldenEye, I say to myself, I'm pretty sure for me that was at least like 2 consoles ago. Hard to believe. And I probably honestly only bought new ones when new Bond games came out. I think probably if I was buying a new console, I'd probably buy like maybe 2 or 3 other games, just for some variety, like a driving game or whatever else.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I remember specifically. I mean, From Russia with Love was a big one. I really thought they did a really nice job with that one, because I just loved how it was this. Even though the title is From Russia with Love, it was kind of just this homage to Connery. Because I mean, it had the car from Goldfinger, it has the jetpack from Thunderball.
Yep.
So yeah, it really was this kind of just sort of classic James Bond game, and kind of updated and stuff. And I mean, it was kind of funny, because it was nice that they brought back Connery, but of course it's like, "Oh, I'm Sean Connery," like it's like, all right, well, I'm so there's this uber young face with this old voice coming out, but
Right.
it's
I remember that. I remember that first mission and hearing him, speak. Ordering the martini. I'm like,
right.
oh God, Connery's old.
Right. Like, what I've never heard of Tatiana Rumlana. Like, wow, okay. I mean, and I kind of feel like, dude, don't, are you kidding me? You don't you don't poke fun at Sean Connery. Like,
Right.
No,
Right.
mind your manners. But
Yeah.
Right.
but yeah, I mean, it was so hard not to catch that. But yeah, I mean, it was a pretty fun game all around, and I liked that it kind of took some chances. Like I said, it kind of got outside the box a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, there was a really nice that streak of Agent Under Fire, Nightfire. You know, we really did have some good stuff for a while there. It was really nice. The games were pretty good. I mean, there was a couple of clunkers. I remember the what's is I guess the Rogue Agent, the GoldenEye Rogue Agent.
Oh,
Yeah,
I remember hearing
yes.
about that one. I had never played it, but I remember that got panned pretty hard from what I remember.
I remember playing that and I didn't hate it. It sort of felt like what's the term in movies? Like it takes place 20 minutes into the future, like where it's just a little too futuristic and kind of cutting edge to be reality. And that's sort of how I felt about it. Like there was parts where they were like just full blown spaceship things that you were kind of trying to take down or whatever. And I mean, it really did kind of go pretty outer limits, but I thought the gameplay was reasonably good. So it really did sort of feel like futuristic James Bond a little bit. I didn't hate it. I didn't, you know, but yeah, it's almost like, but if you're not gonna like, why even make the comparisons to GoldenEye? Don't call it GoldenEye unless you're gonna full blown try to recapture what you did.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, I remember GoldenEye Rogue Agent did bring back some of the classic villains too. You know, I had Dr. No, had Goldfinger kind of in the story mode there. Multiplayer had some of the classic Bond locations. I know they had Scaramanga's Funhouse, and I think they might even had Crab Key, if I'm not mistaken, from Dr. No.
Right.
So that was always interesting.
Yeah.
Plus,
then they did the Legends after that, which was sort of more.
They did 007 Legends, yeah.
Then it was like full blown, and that was. I don't want to say sacrilegious, but I kind of felt like it was maybe playing a little too hard and fast, where like they were basically injecting Daniel Craig's Bond into all these old stories. And I don't know. I was kind of mixed on it a little bit. And it was sort of like the end product ends up being a little weird because you sort of have Daniel Craig looking completely modern, talking to Pussy Galore, who's still wearing the clothes she wore in the 60s, you know, and it's like, all right, well, I guess if you were going to update it, maybe you should actually update it, you know, like maybe do a little more to try to, you know, bringing this into the modern day.
No, I completely agree. And it didn't really work for. I mean, the game was okay. I had it for I think I had it for PS3. It was okay, but they did the same thing with GoldenEye Reloaded with Daniel Craig, where they tried to remake
I
remember
GoldenEye.
Yeah.
But it was Daniel Craig. Like they just stuck him in there. So I'm like, people
I don't
say they
don't
like
even
that
think
game.
I even played that one. Yeah, I remember hearing such mixed things between mixed and full blown bad that I didn't even bother.
Right. So that originally came out for the Nintendo Wii. That was kind of like a Wii exclusive. And then they did a GoldenEye Reloaded, which was for Xbox, PlayStation, and it was the exact same game, but it really didn't work for me. I'm like, Daniel, you're great, but this GoldenEye is not your movie, man.
Right.
So,
yeah. That was even. I remember my girlfriend even got me a copy of it, which to this day is still unopened. I think it was for like one of the smaller consoles that had come out. So I was like, no, I'm not buying a whole console for this. It's just not doing it. That's and again another game called GoldenEye. It's like, guys, stop doing that. And it's weird because, like I said, I mean, I don't know how difficult it would have been to just modernize the classic game and put it out, because people would have been all over that.
There was
completely agree.
Greg, I don't know if you saw, there was something that came out, oh gosh, this probably would have been about within the last 6 months, that something leaked online that they had actually gone through and started to update the original GoldenEye. And then I know you can download it on different sites online and play through it, but like they had the button that you could go back and forth between the new graphics and the old graphics, and you don't realize. I was watching a video of it, and you don't realize when it's playing the new graphics in your mind, that's just what it looked like, 20 something years ago, 25 years ago. And then you hit the button and it's like, oh gosh, this looks like, I can barely tell I'm holding a gun, so, but
I go ahead, Joe.
I don't have a lot to add to it, just other than I heard that too. I had friends who basically were able to send me something saying like, here you go, here it is. And I'm like, what do I do with it now? Like, it's like apparently I'm a Mac guy,
Sure.
so apparently you need a PC to be able to run it and stuff.
Right.
So which I to this I'm still debating on possibly doing if I get a couple minutes and a couple extra dollars sitting around to do something. Because I mean, I've seen the videos of it. Boy, I would love to play
great.
that.
Yeah,
it looks great.
Well, they wanted to release that as like a downloadable version of the consoles, and then I think Eon Production stepped in, or whoever, and they just shut it down. Barbara and Michael just shut it down, and I'm always complaining about them, Joe. I mean, I'm always telling Justin, the Bond producers, they need to go, and Justin doesn't know who they are, but he's just nice enough to listen to me.
There's so many instances
complain about them.
Granted, from an outsider looking inward, it just seems like the franchise, when it's good, it's a license to print money, right? I mean, like that's just such an easy.
Absolutely.
That's I just granted, I don't know the ins and outs of the producers and all that, but I just feel like you have a chance to make a boatload of money, and there's a lot of people that grew up with Goldeneye that would jump at that. But
yeah, right. That's it's Bond is a franchise that I think has so much goodwill that if you just don't muck it up, people will go and see it, and you'll have an audience all the time. I mean, I kind of feel like I like Skyfall a lot. I don't know if I would call that a $1 billion movie, though. I think a lot of it was simply the goodwill and the it was when you sort of watch that film and sort of read between the lines, it is sort of just a love letter to James Bond in general. So I think people were willing to go and see it more than once. Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, if you had this game that was done, put it out. Why not? I mean, I don't know what goes through the mind of people. I guess like, well, we didn't do it, we didn't have creative control, we didn't have say over this, so we're not going to let some whippersnapper come in and tell us what's what. But good Lord, I mean, especially now when there's no Bond video games. I mean, we finally just got word recently that they're working on something new.
Yes, and we'll get into that.
But it's been a drought. We haven't had a video game since Bloodstone, which I'm pretty sure was out between Quantum and Skyfall. So, I mean, that's a while ago now.
Yes, I believe you're right. That was released. Bloodstone, I believe, was released with GoldenEye Reloaded within like a day of each other, and Bloodstone got Bloodstone got no attention whatsoever, and was the better game, was the much better game. So, but
I do remember, I remember that one being pretty good, but I didn't think it was as good as Quantum. I thought the Quantum game was better.
I preferred Quantum to that still. But
in fact, I'm pretty sure I only got to a certain level on Bloodstone and got frustrated and put it down. So I don't think I've ever actually finished that game, which is kind of saying a lot. It's all right.
Yeah. But I would take Bloodstone over GoldenEye Reloaded any day. That was just me, but because at least it was a new story. But like we were saying, so we do have a new James Bond game in development. Right now, the working title is Project 007. It's developed by IO Studios, who do the Hitman games. That's kind of like their big title at the moment right now. We don't really know much about it. We do know it's an original story. We do know it's an origin story, a possible 2022 release date, and the Bond character will not be based on any of the actors. So we will have, either a, just kind of like IO's version of their Bond, or possibly what I was thinking, and this is popular with a lot of games now, is a customizable or kind of like a build your own Bond. You create your own character. And I know you know this, Joe, too. We are always seeing things, articles, fake news articles. Bond should be this. Bond should be, a female. Bond should, you know what I'm saying, just whatever. And they keep trying to, change the character up for the movies, or at least they want to. I'm wondering, this is something maybe, creating, the Bond you want in the video game. Maybe that would be, an option that would work better and maybe be more appealing to, this kind of younger generation of gamers. What do you think about that?
I like it a lot. In fact, again, kind of having flashbacks of Agent Under Fire. I remember that one sort of did this. It's funny. The actual Bond they use is like kind of just a generic
Hmm.
face, and somebody, whoever did the voice for it, he actually kind of looks, looking back, he kind of looks like Archer. Like when they did Archer, I almost feel like they were kind of looking at that video game, or maybe because it's like spot on, perfect, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I like the idea that they're gonna like literally do like a totally fresh character, as opposed to just kind of like doing movie tie-ins.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I kind of like like when they did the Brosnan, the Agent Under Fire, and I think there was one after that. I'm gonna get my titles confused, but there was
What
one of the
was
it was
that?
one of the
Nightfire or?
it was no there was I think there was a third one. It was Agent Under Fire, Nightfire. Like the Brosnan did two. I gotta look at my shelf.
Everything or nothing.
That's the one. Everything or
Okay.
nothing. Yeah, and that was pretty cool. Like, remember they brought in Willem Dafoe as the villain, and Heidi
Yes.
Klum was the Bond
Yes.
girl, and it was almost like this sort of like unofficial.
Jaws was back too. Richard.
Right? Yeah, right. So it's like this. Yeah, it kind of worked as like the fifth Brosnan movie. So that was pretty
Mhm.
sweet. So I mean, yeah, I mean, I like when they do the sort of movie tie-ins with the familiar Bond actors, but I really kind of have a soft spot for when they have like a totally new thing, where they're just gonna do like this kind of, I almost want to say like a faceless Bond, generic
Mm-hmm.
Bond that you can sort of
Mhm.
just kind of get into as its own thing. So yeah, I think it's got this, and I don't know a lot about this game other than what you just said. But just knowing, like you said, the Hitman people are putting this together, which
Mm-hmm.
I've heard
Yeah,
really
Hitman,
good
which is,
things about.
yes, that's more of like an
Yeah.
over-the-shoulder third person, kind of larger level sandbox level shooter, which is a great, me personally, I think is a great structure for a new Bond game if they do indeed go
Mm,
that direction.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
But that the character builder, I mean, we see that in, Justin. I know you're a big Fallout guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cyberpunk just came out. Far Cry 5, to name a few, where you're literally building your character from scratch and then inserting inserting them into the game.
Mm-hmm.
So we might not get that. I mean, we might not get it at all, but we might get a version of that possibly, and that might make it more appealing, to, just to gamers in general. I don't know. What do you think about that, Justin? Would that
Yeah.
kind
I
of
mean,
spark your interest a little bit?
for me, I think it'd be cool if it was third person. There's something about being able to see your character instead of just being the nameless, holding the gun in front of you.
Hmm.
And I think too, if you're going to give people the time to create their own character, they're going to want to see it, right? There's too many. Gosh, there's a ton of games where you spend all this time creating your character and then you never see them outside of a couple, cutscenes or whatever. Or when
Mm,
you beat the game, they show your character walking around. So I would be totally on board with that. The Hitman games are pretty cool. I've played a few. The really cool thing with them is there's so many different ways to complete your objectives. If they want you
Hmm.
to, you have so many targets, and it's not just walking up and shooting someone. It's, oh, I'm going to rig the chandelier to fall on somebody, or, oh, I'm going to poison their drink, or I'm going to dress up as, oh gosh, there was one where you're at a racetrack and there's like a mascot, like a pink flamingo. So you walk around in this goofy pink flamingo suit, and then eventually you earn the trust of whoever you need to take out, and you get close enough and you do the deed. So yeah, I would definitely check it out. I think it'd be pretty cool. And
right.
for somebody who's not familiar with the series as much, being able to have that blank slate to project your thoughts on would be pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of room, instead of, because the Bond games have just been kind of, just really skinned to Call of Duty games.
Mm-hmm.
I know 007 Legends was, a couple of the other ones, and
Mm,
just to kind of get maybe more of like a stealth, spy, type of gameplay. At
Yeah.
least having that be an option. I feel like that would be appealing and maybe more, more similar to, classic elements of the franchise in the movies and everything.
Sure.
So
Sure.
I feel like there's a lot they can do with it. Hopefully, hopefully they do some good stuff with it, because I know they're probably spending an arm and a leg to make this game. They don't own this property, but they don't own the care, but they want to, make it, make some money off of it. So probably need to make it appealing. And of course, they could probably put in a character builder, and Eon could put the kibosh on it in the end, I suppose. Like, oh no, it must look like Sean Connery or whatever. So who knows? But is there anything like Joe? You said you're a couple consoles behind. If this game came out on, say, the PS5 or the new Xbox, would that be enough to send you out and go pick one up to play this?
Almost definitely, yeah. I mean, I would probably have to hear, oh my god, it's terrible, and then I'll skip it. But I mean, as long as it's reasonably good, I will definitely check it out and play it. Because honestly, it kind of, I say to myself, wow, I mean, when I think about how far back the last Bond game was, I mean, I think we're talking, it's got to be, I mean, that must have been 2000. I mean, Quantum was 2008. I'm pretty sure Skyfall was 2012.
And I think I could be wrong, but I think 007 Legends was the last one, and that came out during Skyfall's when it was in theater, if I'm not mistaken, because they actually had a bonus mission, which was the Sky, when you fight Patrice in the hotel. Like that was bonus content they released for the game. So I know it was around 2012.
October 2012. I just looked it up.
October.
Wow.
Okay,
October
2012. Yep. There we go.
So it's going to be so probably right around the 10-year anniversary of that one is we're going to get this one. So yeah, I will probably. In fact, I don't know if it works this way, but boy, I would love to get a console that plays some of the older games as well. I'll definitely get something. Like I said, assuming it's reasonably good, I'll definitely be getting a console and playing it.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what.
In fact, if they have multiplayer, I could totally see myself losing a lot of hours.
There we go.
I can see my girlfriend getting very pissed off.
Is there any? Would you guys prefer like a third person view, or would you like to, I mean, I'm sure it won't go back to first person, but how would you feel about that? I mean, me personally, I think I like the idea of a third person Bond game again. I feel like that might work a little bit better now. Yeah, we'll kind of see where it goes.
I get, honest. I that's a good question. I sort of feel like maybe again, just kind of harkening back to the GoldenEye days. I feel like I'm so used to that first person, but I do like it when, like you're talking about before, about how they break off into the cutscenes and you just get to see your guy doing some stuff, and
right,
totally cool. I do like it when they kind of, like, some of the Bond games were great because they would break off and all of a sudden you'd have a driving level and it would sort of break up the monotony a little bit. So I mean that's always fun too. But I mean, the driving levels too, like I'm not married to those. Sometimes I feel like they never get it quite right, especially I've played driving games where it feels really good, and then you sort of play it in a Bond game where you feel like you're driving a bar of soap.
Yeah.
It just
you can
feels
tell
like
it wasn't sort of their priority.
Yeah, right. It was a secondary thought, and it's kind of fun, but not fun enough. So maybe we'll stick to the other thing. So, but yeah, I mean, the first person or like you said before, the third person over the shoulder would work.
All right. Just to finish off here. Sorry, Justin. I have some Bondy. I have some Bondy and stuff for Joe right
like
here.
I'm getting like a first-rate education here. So no, hey,
we're dragging you into the universe learner, here.
I'm all good.
I think we're gonna have to do another one in a couple of months, and Justin's gonna have to come back with his book reports ready.
Yes. I'll have I'll have to make like a top 5 list of I'll stream a bunch of them, or I can just borrow them from Greg. I know he's got all of them.
Oh, I bet. I got Blu-ray, DVD. I got the VHS still. I'm never giving that
right.
up. So I bet I can pick your top 5, Joe. I bet if you watch them all, I bet I could pick your top 5. I could get.
That
I
might
could get
be
4 of them.
you know, I'll be done with grad school in June. That might be a good summer vacation for me. You know, not the summer of George. It'll be the summer of Justin. And I'll just,
So, Judge, with a Bond marathon. It's like my every.
We can make that work. We can definitely make that work.
Okay, Joe. I just wanted to get some thoughts on going back to Goldeneye, but this time the movie. And not so much just questions about the movie or thoughts on the movie. I want to know what it was like, because right now we're in that Bond movie drought right now with all the production issues of No Time to Die, and obviously the pandemic and everything keeps pushing the movie back.
Yeah.
So I know when Goldeneye released. That was 1995. That was the first Bond movie in 6 years. You saw it in 95. What was that like, finally seeing a Bond movie again after so long, and with the issues with MGM and the studios and everything, no one would know if it would be coming back.
Yeah.
So was Goldeneye kind of like that re-energizer for the franchise in 95?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it was a weird time because it's funny how, I mean, as you get older, a year is not as long as it is when you're younger. I mean, when you're younger, a year is just a lifetime, and it was funny because that was sort of a pivotal time for me, meaning when License to Kill came out in '89. Summer of '89, I'm 19 years old. I'm still kind of freshly out of high school, probably just started college and was still, real young. And so that gap between my 19-year-old self and 25, nearly 26-year-old, I mean, that's kind of a substantial leap. So you sort of feel for a long time, for a couple of years, you just sort of felt like, oh yeah, I really liked James Bond. That was a real cool thing. It was kind of, but it just felt like it was done. So once you saw those first commercials, the trailers with the words across the screen, the name, the number, and it was like, whoa, what's this? And so it was kind of cool. It was like, oh wow, we're doing James Bond again. So and that was honestly, like I said, I mean, I sort of feel like I don't know if I would have been a fan the way I am today if it just kind of ended that, like I said, I mean, I really liked, I sort of grew up watching Roger Moore. Timothy Dalton was like the first time it was like, oh wow, they're getting a new James Bond. And that was sort of a big deal. And he did his too. And then it was all of a sudden over, and all right. So yeah, and I guess I would have always been a fan of Bond like everyone else, but the if it just kind of ended there, so once it came back, all of a sudden it was this whole different spark. I was like, oh wow, we have James Bond movies. And again, I'm in my like late 20s, early 30s. Every time a new Bond would come out, you would take a date, go see it on opening night. It was it kind of became like this tradition. So yeah, it was pretty fun. It was, and it was great too, because they, at least for a good while, I mean, they kept it pretty consistent. It was like every 2 years you got a new movie, and it was great, so yeah, it really was kind of like, it was an interesting time to be a fan. You were regularly getting new movies. I mean, the first one, I mean, like the newest one would barely be out before you're talking about the next one. Well, what are we gonna do now? And you didn't have that long to wait to figure it out. So yeah, it was a good time.
That's awesome. So how does that compare to the drought we're having right now? Obviously it's been what, 5, when did Spectre come out? 2015. So it's going to be, I don't know if it's going to be as long, but what I feel is Goldeneye, that kind of brought the franchise, back to life a little bit, like I said, kind of gave it that re-energizer. I'm really looking forward to No Time to Die, but to me it feels like we're kind of waiting, maybe it's just for a sequel or a conclusion to a previous bad movie.
Right.
That, people, maybe the non-Bond fans don't necessarily remember what happened in Spectre. So I know for us
Yeah.
Bond fans, we're obviously eagerly waiting for everything.
Mm.
But I'm wondering if this doesn't have the same kind of punch as like Bond is back. It was
Mm.
like you see him like, oh yeah, we're Madeline Swan is back, or
Yeah.
so to
Yeah.
speak. Like, do you have a thought on that? Like, I obviously I know it's probably tougher now to kind of wait it out, but
Yeah.
any sort of similarities between 89 and 95 as to 15 and 21,
Well,
hopefully.
yeah. I mean, it's kind of funny. I mean, honestly, what really is frustrating is that back in the early days, even before. I mean, like when I think about when before 1969, they literally did one every year. I mean, for the first 5 films, it was like every year they put out a film, and it was like, good lord, could you imagine? And then like every 2 years was pretty for decades. It was just every 2 years you got a new Bond
Hmm.
movie. That's
Yep.
it. So yeah, it is wildly frustrating, these big weird long gaps. And to add insult to injury, like you said, for some reason they feel compelled to make them this one um continuous story, this Daniel Craig arc, which I mean, we're doing this is the first time we've ever had the Bond girl appear in 2 consecutive films, right?
Hmm.
So you
Yep.
sort of have to, remember, oh, she's the one from the last one. Oh, well, this happened in the last one. So you'd figure if they're going to do a streamlined, or a continuous story like this, you'd figure, hey, don't wait 5 years between the movies. If you want to do just sort of like random standalone adventures, then you can afford to sit and just chill
Mhm.
out for a little while, then come back and just give us a new James Bond movie. No problem. But if it's a
Absolutely.
sequel to the last one, then don't wait 5 years. Pick one.
No, I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more.
It
That's
almost
exactly what I've been saying.
It
You
almost
know?
sounds like they should have set it up similar to like you've seen with other movies. Like I think to like was it the second third Back to the Future where they filmed them back to back. Or if you're going to continue that story, film them
Right.
back to, or like the second third Matrix movies, they filmed them back to back. So
Right. Right.
again, I
Yeah.
couldn't tell you, but that
I
would make
think
sense.
I think a big problem with that, Joe, or where the production and the writers may have gotten mixed up is when they got the rights back to the character Blofeld in
Right.
Spectre,
Yeah.
which was under control by McClory and his group for so many years. That's a
Sure.
long. We could get into that. I mean,
Sure.
for
Sure.
forever. But
Yeah.
all pretty much what it was is like, hey, we have the rights back to Bond's arch enemy from the books and Connery movies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's just throw them in there instead of saving it. It's like, oh no, we got to use them,
Right.
and let's just try and, because with Skyfall I felt like they were kind of going away from the Vesper Lynn arc. It's like, okay, finally we can get away from Bond feeling down in the dumps and maybe have a gun barrel at the beginning of the movie.
Right.
But
Right.
no, they get the rights back. It's like, well, now we can tie it in all together. And
Yeah.
once they did that, I feel like, oh man, that now it just got
Yeah.
really messy. So
Well, that's it. You're totally right, and you brought up a lot of good points. I think one of the problems is that the filmmakers, they sort of just lack the confidence to sort of do their own thing, and they kind of look around at the other franchises and say, okay, what are they doing? And I kind of feel like Spectre it suffered from the John Harrison syndrome. At least I think that was his name. Do you remember Star Trek Into Darkness?
yes, I know they
You know where I'm headed,
it
right?
it could have been it I think it was literally shot the same. They did the exact same thing.
Right.
So the
It's
big
like
reveal, the big villain
right, the
reveal.
big reveal, that's the gimmick. It's like, we're gonna do this big reveal and everybody's gonna go, oh yeah, like in the other movies. So I think once they got the rights to Spectre, they were like, oh, we can do one of those where it's a big reveal. It's the big evil organization from wherever. So, and I think they just felt like, all right, we got it. We got our gimmick, and the rest of it's going to take care of itself. Well, it doesn't always take care of itself. You actually got to write a story. You know, you have to give us something that works and that's kind of satisfying to watch. And they kind of just figured, oh, this will be, people are going to love this. And it's like, no, not really.
Well,
and that brings us to today, by the way, because now I sort of feel like we were talking about standalone films and not doing this as a sequel. But I guess my theory has always been that Spectre was so lukewarm at best. You know, I mean, the Craig tenure has been up, down, up, down. And I think that Daniel Craig realized that Spectre was a dud and he didn't want to go out, you know, on a low note. So I sort of felt like he wanted to come back and do one more good one. And I guess, you know, and we're all sitting here going, come on, guys, do a standalone thing, do a standalone adventure. We don't need to, it doesn't have to tie in with everything. But I guess if you're Craig Fukunaga and the rest of the crew, well, so we're going to have 4 that are connected and one just kind of random thing to end off on. Sure. We have to sort of sum this all up.
You have to tie it up. Yeah.
Right. So I guess that's what you do. But right. The overall effect is, I mean, the problem is that like the Star Wars, like a lot of these franchises, they don't really take the time to plan.
Exactly.
So yes. And Spectre to me was bizarre because you kind of had this storyline happening. Like, I mean, Casino Royale, the whole kind of point at the end is like, oh, there's a shadowy organization that's sort of pulling the strings from somewhere. So they laid the groundwork. They sort of follow that up with Quantum. They skipped that in Skyfall, but you easily could have gone back and just sort of, but it was almost like they forgot that they had done that. Yeah. So they're kind of reinventing a wheel that didn't need reinventing. Like they kind of did Spectre as if they just forgot that they had that, you know, and they tried to fake it and be like, oh, see, we meant this all along. Well, if you just did it right, you know, you wouldn't have to kind of pretend that you did it.
Well, exactly. They came up with Quantum and Quantum of Solace, which just kind of, you know, makes the title, you know, it gives it no meaning then whatsoever. Because that's a Quantum of Solace was a short story by Fleming, and they just used it for there because it's like, oh yeah, you know, Bond, you know, is looking for that Quantum of Solace. I'm still not convinced I know what it means. But then they call the bad guys then they call the bad guys Quantum. I'm like, okay, that's going to be the Spectre. You know, they have the little Q pins everywhere. And went, oh wait, there's actually a bigger organization. So we have Quantum and we have Spectre. Yeah. I'm like, no.
Literally, if they just didn't make that dumb mistake by giving the bad guy group the name Quantum, you could have done this thing where this was Spectre all along. But because you had to call them Quantum because you think audiences are too dumb to realize what Quantum of Solace means. I mean, they like the title. You know, because it was, I mean, okay, so you did Casino. It was like, yay, we got it. We're doing Fleming again. So I guess they were like, we want to do another Fleming title. So they grabbed Quantum of Solace and just completely butchered the usage of the, and what's frustrating to me is like, you know, the kicker is, and I don't know if you've read the short story, but it's this kind of funny short story that has nothing to do with James Bond.
No,
he's hearing this. Yeah. It's like just super duper quick. It's somebody's relaying the story to James Bond, and it's about this couple that the title refers to the fact that if you just found a quantum of solace, a measure of peace
or
you could have gotten through a
something.
bad situation, right? A level of comfort, etc. And here I am saying to myself, well, that is actually the whole point of Quantum of Solace, the movie, is that Bond is trying right. Yeah, it's Bond trying to come to terms with whether or not Vesper betrayed him. Can he live with this or whatever? You could have had the scene with Bond and Mathis chilling out drinking wine. That could have been Mathis's time to shine and have some good dialogue, which you had, by the way, in Casino and Skyfall. That could have been his chance to, like, you know, give some dialogue and say, you know, you need to find a quantum of solace, a measure of whatever piece to get through this bad time. No, let's just call the bad guys Quantum. Yeah, that's it, and give them Q pins, right?
Nope. I agree with everything you said there, Joe. And yeah, Yeah.
Right.
I think you said everything right there. Couldn't agree more. The title could have worked just like you said with Vesper Lynn, but they just took it in a different direction and just try to make it relate. Just
Yeah.
we couldn't figure out what yes, I didn't know what it meant at first, but I have a dictionary. I can
Right.
piece it together. I can
Yeah,
piece it together from there, and then
totally.
it's like, okay, that makes sense, and
Yeah.
it's Fleming. Great job. And
Yeah.
then you write the movie. Oh, not so great.
Right.
So
And it's and,
I
again,
do like the movie though. I it wasn't well received, but I actually do like the movie.
yeah. It
Um,
is funny though, but that's why we're still. I feel like before No Time to Die, before we started seeing trailers, I think if somebody said to me, "What's the one thing you want from this movie?" I'd be like, "I want them to not mention Vesper.
oh
Can we please
please.
not talk about Vesper again?" And of course, but again, because they've sort of painted themselves into a corner. Well, I guess now we gotta tie up all the
Now
loose ends.
I mean if you listen to the Billie Eilish song when it came out, and then there was this one line, faces from my past, I'm like, oh yeah, that's got
There,
Evil
yep,
Green written
there
all
we
over
go.
it. So
Yeah.
one last sorry Justin,
No, no, I'm
did we
enjoying
bond
this.
you out there?
No, no, not at all. Not at all.
One last thought I had, Joe. So to Die comes out, and oh, it's huge, it's wonderful. Bond is back, Lashana Lynch, and everything. So that brings that energizer back into the franchise, and we have the new video game coming out too.
Mm.
We're into the Bond movies again, and then Daniel Craig just walks off into the sunset, and we're on the search for a new Bond again. Do you think that would, I don't want to say damage, but do you think that would kind of derail the future for the films at all? If we get, we fall in love with No Time to Die, we fall in love with Daniel Craig. I
Hmm.
mean, that's granted. That's granted if the ending of that movie, is appropriate. I don't want to give any spoilers. I don't know any spoilers or anything, but I'm sure you and I have heard things. But let's just say, and then, he, this is rumored that it'll be his last. Do you think that could kind of derail the future of the franchise at all if this, in fact, does kind of bring more attention back to the character of James Bond?
I think that it would be a nice problem to have if but if I'm getting what you're saying correctly, let's say the film is really well received and everybody
Mhm.
is all of a sudden into Daniel Craig's James Bond again, and then suddenly it's all over. Yeah, I would probably just write that off as a nice problem to have. I'd like to see that happen where we have to sort of deal with that. Because
Okay.
I honestly think, like, right after Spectre, I never would have thought I would have said it, but I was kind of getting a little Craig fatigue. uh I mean, I walked out of, like, people have heard me talk about when Casino Royale came out, and I'm already a hardcore fan at this point, but Casino Royale comes out and I'm just like, this blows my mind. I saw that film 6 times in the theater. Each time I walked out feeling 6 inches taller. It was just the coolest movie ever. And I'm like, man, if somebody sees this movie and they don't get James Bond, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, this was just the best Bond movie I'd ever seen. So I mean, honestly, I'm like, oh, I hope this means they're gonna go back and do the books and they're gonna modernize all the books, whatever. I mean, I just thought the sky was the limit. Uh, but honestly, by the time they did Spectre, I was just like, all right, enough with the angsty problem. I mean, I'm not a teenage girl. I don't want Twilight. I
Hmm.
want James Bond. It's enough with
Right.
this sort of stuff. So I was sort of feeling like by the time Spectre was done, I'm saying to myself, look, let's just bring in Henry Cavill and do some fun James Bond movies, just like a little silly, like
Mhm.
not too much, but just just light stuff. Because I was so bogged down with some of the weighty stuff, and not good weighty, just kind of like heavy for
Right.
the sake of being heavy.
It was almost, heavy. It got, pretty like heavy drama there for a minute.
Right.
They
Yeah.
were turning into,
And
Bond with feelings and everything.
Right, yeah,
So,
and again, if they do it right, I don't mind it. But I kind of felt like, almost going back to what we said before about Spectre, the big reveal being the gimmick. I kind of feel like the drama is getting to be gimmicky as well. Like if we make this real deep and they're gonna be brothers, and then people just sort of get it that it's supposed to be real deep and important. No, it's not. You still got to write a story. I want a good screenplay. So yeah, I was kind of exhausted. So I sort of feel like I'm hoping I really, and I'm feeling pretty confident about it, pretty optimistic that I think No Time to Die is going to be very well received. I think it's a gorgeous looking movie. I think the commercials have been really, really nice looking. So I'm expecting a pretty good movie, probably in the ballpark of Skyfall, if I had to take a guess. So, but with that said, the future of Bond is going to be curious because I sort of feel like it really depends on what the owners do with it. Because again, I mean, we're going 5 years, almost 6 years without a movie, partially because of COVID, but honestly, we wouldn't even be sitting here waiting for this movie if they put it out in a reasonable amount of time. I mean, this should have came out years ago. So I don't want to hear, like, when I hear, they're like, well, now we can't do it because of COVID. It's like, I'm not really feeling too generous. It's like when, like, if a teacher gives you an assignment and the kid comes in and says, oh, I was going to do it, but the dog ate my pencil. And it's like, but I gave you the assignment 3 months ago. Don't tell me that, right?
Definitely been there.
That's kind of how I feel about this. It's like, don't cry to me about COVID. You had years to put this out.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, so it really does depend on. People have asked me like, well, what do you think is next? It depends. If they sell the property, if they don't sell the property, you might as well just sit down and wait another 5 years for another movie because they ain't getting any younger. They're not getting more energetic about doing these. They obviously like their other pet projects, and I can understand that. But yeah, don't expect a Bond too soon. If they sell it, we're living in a time where people are starving for material to put on streaming services. So if somebody buys it, you're probably going to get like at least a movie pretty soon. You'll probably get a TV series. I sort of feel like we might get like a new blockbuster Bond film on the big screen in 2 years. With a new actor and it's fun. It looks great. I could also see them doing like a series on Netflix or wherever, where it's like a period Bond where they're going back and doing the books and doing it back in the 60s, 50s, and 60s. So I mean, and I could even say like maybe even an offshoot. Maybe we're doing Felix Land. Like depending on who ends up with this, we're either gonna get not much or almost too much, if I had to guess.
No, I completely agree with all of that. I just don't know. Like you said, we're not sure what the owners of it are going to do. We don't know what Eon Productions is going to do. I know that it's like a family business for them almost. Obviously with Cubby Broccoli and Harry Saltzman, all that. It's always kind of stayed close quarters as far as producing the movie. So selling it might be a big life changing thing. Even though they could they could have more money they could ever spend, for getting the rights to Bond.
Yeah.
But if Eon still holds on to it, picking the next actor, and I have confidence they'll pick a good actor. I mean, they fooled a lot of people with Daniel Craig.
Sure did.
But like you said, we just don't know when we would see that. How far down the road it would be if this is indeed Craig's last film, which it kind of looks like it will be. And like you said, Joe, from For No Time to Die, from the trailers and TV spots, the movie looks fantastic. So, I hope you're right. This kind of brings us back to life. It's a great conclusion for the Daniel Craig story arc. And, it does him justice in the end. So
I think what you're going to end up with too, and it's funny because we were saying earlier, I said like the film, the Craig film tenure to me is going to look like a big W. It's like, up, down, up, down, up. And I sort of feel like when it's all said and done, in fact, Justin, I think you should probably plan to do like at the very least, do the Daniel Craig marathon.
Okay. All right.
Watch them all the way through. Because I sort of feel like once you see this last film, if you did like a 10-hour marathon where you watch it just all the way through and treat it as like one big long thing, I think maybe the roller coaster will kind of level out a little bit, where it just sort of feels like, this whole 10-year, kind of works is in one linear sort of way. So yeah, I have a funny hunch that this last one is going to kind of level things out and really sort of bring the whole thing up a little bit.
All right. Well, do you have anything else to add, Justin? I know we kind of touched on all our subjects right here. This interview has been awesome.
Yeah, no,
by the way.
Joe, thank you so much. I think it's so fascinating to me to see so many similarities, even with like properties that I'm really into, whether it's Star Wars or DC or I am a huge Ninja Turtle fan, despite Michael Bay almost ruining the series a couple of years ago, or a decade ago now almost. But it's so interesting to see granted, I know Bond is in its own place with the rights holders and stuff like that, but just to see the ups and downs, too many movies, not enough movies. I think like Star Wars is a perfect example. Everyone was so excited and so hyped for that return with the new trilogy, and then whether or not you're a fan of it's a whole nother thing. But again, I think, Joe, you said it best, where you're like, you can kind of tell sometimes they're not writing in advance for this arc. It's just, this is where we finished. All right, now we got to make something up. Yeah. And I think, that it's very interesting to see the similarities, and hopefully with this last one, they nail it, because then that would give me something to watch and enjoy this summer. I'm always looking for something. So
there was a time when people were talking a little bit about maybe they should sell James Bond to Disney, and I think a couple of years ago I would have said that's just sacrilegious, but then of course when I saw the Marvel films starting to come out, I kind of went, wait a second, actually maybe now I'm a little on board with it. Then I saw the Star Wars trilogy and I said, nope, do not sell to Disney.
It's I loved I love Rogue One, great. The new trilogy, no thanks. Here. Mandalorian I enjoyed, but
same here.
It's interesting to see these big corporations or companies come in, and when they get the rights, they either sit on it or they pump it for all it's worth, and then there's nothing left, so hopefully that doesn't happen to Bond for you guys. So.
And by the way, Justin, real quick, you said Ninja Turtles. I was reading Ninja Turtles when they were black and white comics.
All had the red bandanas in the beginning.
Exactly. Right. With different color bandanas, get out of here. No, red bandanas. I'll look at their weapons. That's how I know who is who.
Oh yeah. No, I had the action figures. I remember seeing the 1990 movie when I was a kid, and I loved. The first one was so dark. The second and third one the second one's okay. Third one's not so much. But Casey Jones, can't go wrong with Casey Jones. So
yeah. Oh, totally.
Well, Greg, I'll let you go ahead and wrap it up if you like.
Well, I don't know what else to say. This has been, for our third episode of Baseball and Whatever, awesome. We have a huge legendary podcaster, and he does it about what he loves. Joe, do you have any podcasting advice for us? We want to pull your knowledge a little bit. Any words of wisdom for a couple guys starting out?
I would say keep it fun.
Okay.
Honestly, and it kind of sounds like just how do I say this? Like just something you would say just to kind of keep people motivated, keep people whatever. The truth is, if it becomes a chore, then you'll stop doing it. If it becomes like, oh crap, all right, I committed to doing this once a week, and now but if you keep it fun and keep it to where I would do this regardless, I just like having an excuse to make time to talk to my buddy for a while, and we talk about the things we like, and we keep bringing in consistently interesting people, and it's fun. That's how you keep doing it. That's how you keep going, and that's how you stay consistent, because it can, the trick with, and it's funny because particularly in the James Bond circle, we have like just tons of new podcasts coming out all the time, and a lot of times, because everyone just kind of wants to get in the game, and then this looks like fun, and then you realize, oh wait, that there is actual work involved with this, and then suddenly it becomes a little bit of a drag, and then little by little they sort of go away. So yeah, keep it fun, and if you stick with it, you sort of float to the top of the stack, because a lot of them didn't really stick with it. So yeah, don't put too much on your plate. Keep it fun. Keep it things that if you're interested in the subject, you'll be interesting to other people, you know,
Right.
because if
Right.
if it's something you're interested in, you'll find the insights,
Mhm.
you know, and people will pick up on it. And that's it, honestly. Like, just it sounds like fluff advice, but seriously, if you keep it fun, you'll have a good time with it and you'll keep going.
Awesome. Awesome.
Great advice, Joe. Thanks. Yeah, I think that was what you said right there. I mean, that was our goal right here. That's why we kind of, when we talked to Justin and I, we spoke about baseball originally, and like, just baseball is a lot of the time can be no fun.
Yes.
So,
Baseball's got its whole other mess of issues.
right.
There you
We
go.
have so many other great conversations. Like I said, movies, video games. I rag on the latest Bond news to Justin all the time, and God bless him, he takes it all, and he'll put up with me. And my wife won't put up with it. She's like, "Oh, shut up." So, I have what was I going to ask you? Something else. You on being James Bond. You want to make a quick plug right here? I know you're working on your sophomore slump series. I checked out the From Russia with Love one what you did with David Zaritsky, and that was a fun listen. You have more of those coming up?
Yeah, he and I did 4 of them. So 2 of them will end up on my channel, 2 will end up on his. But in fact, actually, maybe just for the podcast, maybe I'll try to put all 4. But yeah, so definitely more of those. A couple other things coming down the pike, and like I've been saying for the last 8 years, I'm working on my second book.
Awesome.
A little sluggish in my
That'd be volume 2 of being James Bond.
Yeah. I guess maybe I'm just a perfectionist, but I just I don't I just keep working it, and I'm not ready to call it quits yet.
Mhm.
So but pretty soon that'll be out.
No, that's awesome. We look forward to that. Joe, thanks again for
Yes,
coming
thank
on
you
with
a
us.
ton.
It was great talking movies, video games, James Bond, Goldeneye, everything. And we truly appreciate
Yes.
it.
Thanks for
Thank you so
having me.
much again.
Honestly,
Anytime.
this was a lot of
Anytime.
fun, guys. I had a blast, and honestly, seriously, I hope after the new movie comes out, we should talk more. And like I said, Justin, you got to do your homework.
I'm in.
I'm
I am.
expecting.
I'm in. I will. I'll. Once I start watching them, I'll have to do some Twitter updates. I'll do some.
Awesome.
Some early scores. Where I'm thinking the series is going, and you guys can say, "Oh God, he has no idea what he's talking about." So.
Love it.
Well, thanks again, Joe.
All right. Appreciate it.
All right. So that's episode 3 of Baseball Whatever. You guys have a great night. We'll be having this up on YouTube. It'll be on anywhere you find your podcast, whether it's Google, Anchor, Overcast, Podcast Addicts, Apple Podcasts, all of the above. So be sure to check that out. Write us a review if you like. That helps a ton. It feels so cliche saying that, but now I get why it's so important. So thanks again to Joe, and we will catch you guys next time. Take care. Have a great day, and stay safe.